Meredith. Thanks for being on the channel with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brewbird. I really appreciate it. I've been really enjoying your content for a while now. I mean, getting to kind of peek behind the curtain and see all the industry side stuff is really fascinating.
I'm glad. Yeah. I've been looking at your channel too. I see you made some grapefruit cello. That sounds really good.
It is. It is. Yeah. I watched your limoncello video, and I took a lot of notes on that and a lot of other research, but actually it was your video that got me started thinking down that road of trying to do these different cellos. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. That's good to hear. Thanks. Yeah. So I just want to talk a little bit about, your obsession with skills and how you got started with your YouTube channel. So, can you just tell me a bit about your background and how your channel started?
Yeah. I've always been kind of one of those people that picks up a hobby for 10 minutes and then I put it down and go to something else. I'm like a little magpie. Oh, this is a shiny thing. Let me go to that. Let me go to that. And kind of a jack of all trades and master of none. And it was weird. My relative on my father's side used to brew wine. And that, my dad just told me the story offhandedly at a Christmas party one time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I started doing a little Googling on how to make your own wine. And then I discovered, oh, you can brew your own beer. This is cool. And so I did that several times. And then I just kind of, I tend to dive into research mode really, really deep. And so like I can spend months researching one topic just because it's fascinating. It's like if you're ever on Wikipedia and you see that, you type in the one topic that you really need information on, and then there's a link. Oh, and you're like, oh, what's that? And then you go to the next link and there's another one that's interesting and you keep going. So I would end up, basically I was writing these long documents to document all of my research on just cider or a beer style or something. And I was like, this is kind of want to share this, And so I was on Reddit. I started researching distilling, and I was on Reddit, and I just got started talking with this dude named Jesse, and we were both kind of chatting back and forth on a post on the Firewater section of Reddit, and then he sent me a DM, and he was like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about starting a YouTube channel. And I was like, holy crap, so am I. And so we went back and forth, just kind of brainstorming ideas and things we had learned about how to YouTube and all that. And then I filmed 3 videos in a row, and I hadn't posted them yet. I was, trying to be careful and edit things. I was using free software for editing. I still am. And finally, I just pulled the trigger. I think Jesse started videos on his channel first, and I went maybe a month later or something like that. But yeah, that was pretty much it. And so anything that kind of comes across my path as far as interesting to my magpie brain, it might end up on the channel. What's the next thing I picked up? How to start fires, like how to start campfires from with just sticks. And so things like that were kind of kicking around in my brain. I was learning to do things like that and learning brewing and learning about distilling all at the same time when I started the YouTube channel. So I was like, I'll just put everything on there. But it quickly became very clear that channels with too much varied content, unless they start out that way and get a big following for that kind of, just like everybody doesn't care that you're doing 500 different things and that you don't stick to a specific niche, it's a lot harder to get any sort of following when people really just want to see one kind of content or another kind of content. And I'm sure you discovered the same thing. Like, I remember you were talking to Jesse and you mentioned your cooking videos didn't do very well.
Yeah.
Mine didn't either. I have a couple of cooking videos and they never went above like a certain point. And like people don't even though I keep gaining new subscribers, nobody goes through my list and says, oh, cool, he's got a video on how to do barbecue ribs. Let me go check that out too. Nobody does that anymore. So,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. You do kind of get um, when you start a YouTube channel, you kind of get funneled into what your viewers want to see. I mean, the ideas are still, it's what I'm interested in, but I like doing other things too, but my viewers don't necessarily want to watch it. So what ends up on the channel is brewing and distilling, nothing else really, because they don't the guys the guys and girls. I think there's like 3 women that watch my channel. You're one of them. You look at the YouTube statistics; it's pretty low on the female gender. But that's what they prefer. So that's what I put on that channel.
Yeah. Same. I hear you. It's like there's more to me than just this, but
Right.
okay. I guess this is a channel about brewing and distilling now. So we were talking earlier, and you said George from Barley and Hops really helped you out in the beginning, and you go to him for like a lot of advice about distilling and brewing as well, right?
Yeah. George got me started. I did a lot of research, just on forums, brewing forums and distilling forums, and then I was like, well, let me check out YouTube. And at the time that I got started, this was 2015, 2016. George was really he was the only guy talking about brewing and distilling. Well, he was the only guy talking about distilling. There were some good brewing channels. Excuse me. There were some good brewing channels at the time, but he was the only guy talking about distilling with really consistent delivery of information. It wasn't something that was handed down from my pappy. It was, this is the process. Here's the science behind it. Here's how you wire up a controller, or this is how a condenser works. It was real practical information about the process of distilling and the equipment involved in distilling. And everybody else on YouTube at the time was just kind of doing little projects in their garage, or unfortunately giving out a lot of incorrect or inaccurate or unsafe information. But George was consistent in that the information he was giving out was accurate and safe. Now, it's not to say that there aren't different ways of doing things. George is the first to admit that. And that him saying that over and over, he would say, this is not the only way, this is George's way. And every time he said something like that, I would be like, okay, well, let me see what other methods there are for this process that I want to learn about. And it was his willingness to share and his manner of delivery. He reminded me of my favorite high school chemistry teacher. Just the guy who gives you the information in a really practical, easy to understand kind of way. And it didn't hurt that he would occasionally wear those smocks. He had these little smock shirts that he would wear, so he looked like he was almost in a lab coat. But he really kind of set the stage for distilling content on YouTube, and consistent, actual, educative distilling content on YouTube. Without George, I don't know where Jesse and I would be. I mean, I don't know that I would have nearly as much of a. I don't know. It's hard to picture getting as far as I've gotten without George kind of kicking down the door first and beating the path through the woods. Because George doesn't care. As far as the legality of it, you watch his channel. He's in the same state that I am, and the law is the same where he lives. But he doesn't care because, I mean, honestly, I mentioned that to him one time. I said, George, you know, your channel's you're just all out there. He said, all out there doing what? And I said, distilling, with the law and everything. He said, how do you know that's what I'm doing? Maybe I put water in my still. You don't know. Unless you're standing right here, you don't know what I'm doing. So that's kind of his philosophy. And I respect that. He's a braver man than I am.
It must be okay. I mean, his channel's been going on for so long.
Oh,
so.
yeah. He's well over 100,000. I think he's got like 120, 130,000 subscribers now. It's fantastic to see him grow that fast.
But I was just talking to someone, and then they told me, like, oh, it's illegal to even own a still, like
Some
at home.
places it is. Like you can't even have a still, even if it was purpose built for water distillation or essential oil distillation. You're not even allowed to own one. That's just one of those things you have to kind of decide for yourself whether or not you're going to fracture that law or not.
And can I ask, like, has anyone ever come to you
Like
about
personally and said, "Hey, I want to see your distilling setup." No.
or just like
And I
no
don't
one
have a
from the
distilling
law?
setup, so
Okay.
that's the thing. I have to separate myself because I don't feel like I'm as lucky as George.
Okay.
I I mean, I feel like if George went and bought a lottery ticket, he would probably win. Um, just because, I mean, he's got a guardian angel on it for that. I mean, maybe that's overstating it. It's in terms of illegality. It is a federal crime in the United States to distill, even if it is only for personal consumption and you never intend to give it away or sell it or barter. Just the act of distilling itself is illegal. It's a federal crime that supersedes all state laws. In this instance, sometimes they go back and forth, but that's confusing. But not in this case. In this case, it's just like marijuana legislation. Federally, it is illegal to grow or use marijuana in the United States. Colorado, California, and like 20 other states or something. It's at the state level, it's totally legal. But what people forget is that if the federal authorities want to come in, the U.S. federal government wants to come in to Colorado and say, hey, guess what? We're arresting everybody that works in these dispensaries and we're seizing all your money and we're seizing all your marijuana. They can do that. They can absolutely do that. So, yeah, it's just, the state is playing a game to, we're saying this is not legal, or we're saying this is legal in our state of Colorado. And if the federal government wants to do something about it, we will give them no assistance whatsoever. We're not going to let them use our police officers or any logistics or anything to help them because we think this law is unjust and we've changed our state law to reflect our beliefs. But the federal government still has the authority to do whatever they want. Distilling is exactly the same. If I want to distill in my home, I have one option. I have two options. One, I can break the law and put myself in legal jeopardy. Yeah. Or two, I can apply for what's called a federal fuel producer's permit. A federal fuel producer's permit allows you to produce ethanol on your property, but it is not for consumption. It has to be used for fuel, meaning as soon as it comes out of the still, it has to be adulterated with something that makes it unpotable so that you can't drink it. If you drink it, you die or you get sick. So you have to pour like a fuel additive, something that would be fine for your car and damaging to you.
Mhm.
Methanol is a perfect example.
Mhm.
So, uh, you may wonder, well, why don't you just do that? Why don't you just get a
Mhm.
fuel producer's permit? Well, in order to do that, first you have to get permission from your city and your
Mhm.
state that you're going to do that. So you're not in violation of any local laws.
Yeah.
And then you have to sign an affidavit that says that federal ATF officers can come into your home to inspect your facility and inspect your product to make sure it's been adulterated. And that seems reasonable, right?
Yeah.
But they don't need a warrant. They can just knock on the door and come right inside and look wherever they want, because your home, everywhere that touches that distilling, is considered your facility.
Mhm.
Well, what if I don't want you going in my kid's bedroom, or in my bathroom? you know,
Mhm.
your home is your private space, and I don't think anyone should give up their constitutional right against unlawful and unwarranted search and seizure. I'm not a crazy conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I am a big believer in being granted all the rights of the Constitution. If the Constitution
Mhm.
says you're not allowed to come inside my house without a warrant, then I'm not going to sign a piece of paper that says, no, never mind, go ahead. It just seems
Mhm.
like it's a philosophical problem, but it's one that I
Mhm.
refuse to bend on, you know.
Mm.
And, a lot of people are like, well, distilling is such a low level thing. Most people don't even know if it's actually illegal. And that's true. I mean, you could talk to 10 different cops, local police officers, and they
Mhm.
will have 10 different opinions about it,
Mhm.
because it's not something that they look for. It's not something that's on their radar at all. Oh, some guy's making whiskey in his garage. Cool. Or I
Yeah.
don't care. Um,
Mhm.
it only comes to their attention when that same person making whiskey in their garage is then going and selling it, because
Mhm.
selling it without a license is highly illegal.
Yeah.
It's the distilling is one part, but then the dickheads who go and they sell it, and they moonshine or they bootleg. Um, those guys are the ones that really screwed it up for everybody. I fully support legalizing hobby distilling for personal
Mhm.
consumption. I do not
Mhm.
support legalizing hobby distilling so that you can then go and sell it to your neighbors. That should never happen.
Yeah.
Distilling is licensed and regulated because the product that you make could be deadly. You know,
Yeah.
it's just the same exact thing as having health department inspections for a restaurant. Yeah, you can go start a restaurant anywhere you want. You can even start a kitchen in your house and sell catered goods, but you will be subject to regulation and inspection to make sure that the products that you're selling are healthful, healthy for humans to consume. And so, people that want to illegally sell alcohol without paying taxes on it and without it being
Mhm.
inspected, I am not for that at all. So moonshiners and bootleggers, that should always be illegal. But if I
Mhm.
just want to do it in my garage for myself, it's such a close cousin to the currently legal home brewing and home winemaking
Yeah.
that I'm just like, why is this still illegal? And I
Yeah.
think it's because when they legalized home brewing in the 70s, it was 78,
Mhm.
I think there was still a substantial criminal element that was using
Mhm.
bootlegging for their kind of money laundering. But now it's drugs. If there's a criminal organization, they don't use bootlegging to launder their money, or to make money. They use drugs and
Mhm.
whatever other criminal activities that make a lot more revenue. Um, if anybody's making money with illegal moonshine, it's some guy who wants to buy a better car or whatever. At this point, it's not such a widespread problem. Um, so really, there's no onus to keep it illegal. It's not dangerous if you have even a modicum of training. Um, it's not poisonous if you have even a modicum of 5 minutes of explanation about how to make cuts. Um, it's more dangerous to fry a turkey, quite frankly. I think the statistics in New Zealand for house fires for the past 20 years or so that they've had legal hobby distilling, there have been more house fires due to unattended candles and people falling asleep with lit cigarettes in their hand than there have been due to distilling. Nobody still explodes because people that are into the hobby that decide to have a still, they know better. They learn a little bit, and it only takes a tiny bit of knowledge to do it safely. Um, so yeah, I think it's just it's frustrating, but um, we almost got legalized in 2015. There was a law that was in Congress, and it was gonna go through. But the main law that it was kind of embedded in was a big tax bill. And so they dropped it. They scrapped the big tax bill to redraft some stuff. And the section about hobby distilling, um, it didn't get put back in, the new bill. So it just got left out. And the only way we got it in there the first time was there was a guy that owns a distilling, he manufactures distillers here in Texas, Brew House America, I think. He was paying out of his own pocket like $60,000 for a lobbyist to go and draft this legislation and put it in front of congressmen and say, what do you think about this? Is this something you can get behind? What do you think about this? Is this something you can get behind? And, they did their job, but once the bill got shit canned, he was like, I give up. I can't do it again. I don't have the money to do it again. So, the Hobby Distillers Association that was kind of organizing all of this it just dried up. So I don't know how we're going to get legalized in the future, but if I win the lottery, I am going to get a lobbyist.
Wow. So does that mean there's no big push right now in the home
No.
distilling community? No, nothing.
No, and I think that's mostly due to the fact that guys and girls that are in it are that are into the hobby. They're kind of my age. They're in their 40s, maybe 50s and 60s. I mean, yeah, sure, there's people in their 20s and 30s doing it too. But mostly the biggest demographic is folks that are my age and have about this much gray hair. And they tend to have a house, they tend to have kids, they tend to have property and jobs and a community that they care about, and they don't want to get in trouble with the law. So they don't want to risk outing themselves by joining an organization or signing their name to a petition in order to get it legalized. They would rather just, the buzzwords for the hobby are be discreet and be safe. And so they would rather stick to that than stick their neck out and possibly get in trouble. And I completely get that. When I started doing this, researching this hobby, I did not own a house. Now I own a house. And, I've been married to my wife for almost 20 years. And, so I have a lot to lose if someone were to try to prosecute me for distilling. They wouldn't find anything. There's no way to prove that I've ever distilled anything. But hypothetically, it looks like that's what I'm doing. So if any legal person, if any law enforcement person ever had a problem with what I'm doing, they could make my life very uncomfortable. And it is for that reason that I think this law should be overturned. Nobody should lose their livelihood and their rights for doing something that used to be legal before prohibition. It was legal to distill in your home up to a certain amount, just like you could homebrew wine and beer. And then when prohibition came along, They killed everything. And then,
Yeah.
it was after Prohibition was repealed, it was still illegal to homebrew wine and beer for decades. I mean, from
Mhm.
1933 to 1978, it was still illegal.
Mhm.
People did it anyway. But,
Mhm.
you know, we just, the hobby distillers got left behind. And I think that's
Yeah.
very tragic.
Yeah.
So we keep things hypothetical here, and we let the liquor fairy handle the delicate work. And, I leave a big bucket of mash under my pillow at night. And then when I wake up the next morning, there's all these jars of liquor on my counter in the kitchen. It's fantastic. I love my liquor fairy.
Your liquor fairy. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, yeah,
That
that
was
was interesting
long-winded.
to
I'm
hear.
I'm a little too passionate about legalization, so I'm don't worry. You can cut as much of that out as you need to.
No, it was fine. It was good. I was just like listening to you. I didn't even have to ask anything. You're just like going on
I
and on. I
completely I
loved it.
completely lost track of time. I was just like,
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, but I do have some
yeah. Give me some other
subscriber
questions.
questions. All right. So, Callum Binns asked, and I'm just gonna read this out verbatim. Where do you check which materials are safe for distilling? And for those metals that need cleaning to be made safe, how do you know when they are clean enough?
The best place to go for talking about safe materials to use in hobby distilling, homedistiller.org.
Mm-hmm.
Homedistiller.org. Go to the forum, and there's actually there's a section in there about acceptable materials to use. And the main thing is, my personal rule is, what does the industry use? If the industry doesn't use silicone gaskets, I don't use silicone gaskets. If the industry doesn't use brass in any of their fittings, I don't use brass.
Mm-hmm.
As
Okay.
far as cleaning, the best thing to do is to clean your still parts with something like PBW. It's a good brewer's wash to get them, free of scum and stuff like that. But when it comes to getting rid of corrosion, you got to use an acid. So George did. George has a mixture called 551 that he mixes up. It's, I think, 500 mils of hydrogen peroxide, 50 mils of water, and an ounce of citric acid. And that usually
Mm-hmm.
will eat any sort of corrosion off of your copper. Because you see posted on the firewater section of Reddit all the time, someone would get blue distillate because they didn't clean the inside of their copper well enough after they ran something that was probably acidic, something like a rum or brandy. And then they end up getting these blue deposits inside their pipes that they don't know about until they run it, and their distillate comes out looking like Windex. And they're like, is this safe to drink? No, no, don't drink that. Clean your still.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
551
happened to
is
me
really good.
before.
Yeah, I think it's happened to everybody. I didn't get blue
Mm-hmm.
distillate in any of the stuff that I've seen from the liquor fairy, but what I did get was they brought all of the copper parts for me to clean. So, the liquor fairy took apart the still and brought me all the pieces, and I put it in some 551, and I got this big bucket of blue stuff within like 5 minutes. It just all turned blue green.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this, a fish
Mm-hmm.
tank? All these copper pieces and all this blue stuff floating around. Oh, I was like, wow, that needed to be cleaned sooner.
Next question from Haji E5. What is
Ajay,
your yeah, what is your opinion on bubble plates? Are they worth the investment? Oh yeah, well, okay.
um, I think they're fantastic, and I'm jealous of anyone that has one. And I would say absolutely it's worth the investment. Um, I I don't have one. I haven't used one, Haji, but I have studied them for a long time. I even looked into how to make a whole bubble plate setup myself, and it's currently outside of my skill level to make one, and outside of my budget to buy one. But it's definitely something I want to do in the future. So if you are contemplating it, I would go ahead and get one. As far as like what configuration, I don't know. What do the Amazon ratings say?
Mhm.
Like how many stars does it have on Amazon? Is everybody happy with it? That's, I mean, you won't know until you get a piece into your still and you run it on your setup, because at this point, pretty much everything on stills is so interchangeable with tri clamps that, a setup that you buy and your next door neighbor buys a very similar one, in 2 years, they will look completely different because you both have different parts on them. So you got to figure out how new parts run on your setup to decide whether or not you like them. But I think it improves the efficiency enough that it's definitely worth it. And, Jesse loves the hell out of putting plates on his. And honestly, that's enough for me. That sells it for me.
Had a second part to his question, and he asked, which is your favorite style of bubble plates, and have you hypothetically used a bubble plate?
Hypothetically, no. I think if I were to go buy one right now, I would get the kind with the bubble caps instead of just the plate.
Okay.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know, I can't really pin down an answer on that one. It looks like it would be more efficient. Like you would get
Mm-hmm.
more interaction with the spirit that way than just with a screen. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Great. And then from Scott Clay, we have two questions. The first is your cookbook still available?
No, no, it is not.
No.
No,
Oh.
unfortunately, it will be again someday. But I had to pull it down because I, there's some things in it I want to rewrite. I'm not happy with the recipes the way that I did them, and so I want to redo them and then uh, revamp a couple of things in there, and then I'll release it again. But don't worry, it'll come out again one of these days, and I will let
Okay.
everybody know.
And then last question, also from Scott Clay, and it was, did your interest in distilling grow out from your home brewing hobby or out from your professional background as a chef?
I would say initially it was definitely because of the home brewing.
Okay.
The first time I made an all grain beer, I was like, well, this is kind of like how they make whiskey, isn't it? It just
Mhm.
popped into my head as I'm, stirring the mash. This is basically what they do for whiskey. I wonder if I could do this. If I could make my own whiskey, that'd be cool. And so I started researching it, and found out very quickly it was illegal, and I was very dismayed. But it didn't
Mhm.
do anything. It did not dampen my urge to continue learning about it at all.
Mhm.
In fact, it has fueled all of my uh, personal vitriol for the stupid law. I just, if you need somebody to rant about legalization, as you can tell, just ask me
Mhm.
anything about it. I'll
Mhm.
talk for an hour. But the thing as far as my culinary career coming into affect the distilling, yeah, because um, there's just so many weird things you can do in cooking, and that idea of constantly exploring new ingredients from other parts of the world that you've never been to, but you tasted something from that part of the world. That's fascinating to me, and being able to bring that same philosophy into distilling or brewing, I think is absolutely it's vital to keep things fresh and new and to learn new things.
Mhm.
The video I did on Baiju, I can't even express to you how strange it is to me that nobody's using baijiu techniques here. Like, why don't we do that? Why don't we do solid state distillation or solid state fermentation and then solid state distillation, dry distillations where you just have a pot full of water and a huge ass column packed with grain that's all been fermented. Now we have to extract all the alcohol out of the grain, the whole grain. It's not even ground up. It's not even cracked up. It's just been digested by mold for 3 months. That's fascinating. It is so weird, you know, but you can get new things out of it that you never would have been able to get from a standard whiskey distill or whiskey fermentation. You know, a regular old whiskey mash fermentation using your malt enzymes. You're not going to get the flavors. And maybe what you're going to get out of this new technique or new ingredient is going to be amazing. You don't know until you try, but nobody's tried. And it just boggles my mind. That's the chef in me. Why haven't you tried this ingredient in your food? It's so good. You know? So, yeah, I think I tend to get a little passionate about stuff like that because I don't ever believe in throwing something away or discounting a technique or ingredient just because it's not standard for what we do. You know, that's the thing is as a craft distiller, you have a lot more freedom than a major distillery. A major distillery like Diageo that owns every distillery on the planet almost. They don't experiment with anything. Not that we ever find out. If they do experiment with it, it's in a lab somewhere, and we never know about it. Like, have they figured out how to do high-speed aging on a product with wood and light and sound and heat and pressure? Have they put those techniques together to figure out how to make a 10-day-old whiskey taste like it's 15 years old? Probably. But we never find out about it because they don't want to do it. They'd rather keep it over there in the cabinet than actually share that technique with other people. But, you know, and they're never going to make something out of an ingredient that is so obscure and only shows up for 1 month out of the year. But you guys at the craft distillery level or the craft brewery level, if there happens to be a weird berry that grows right next to the brewery, but it's only 2 weeks, for the season, you can go out there, you can pick it, and you can make a seasonal run that will never show up again unless you do it. You know, that's the kind of power that you can get from these weird ingredients that nobody's ever heard of. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I tend to go on.
That's all right. I'm sure Scott will be very happy with your answer at any rate.
I hope so. I know he's been very excited. As soon as you announced the interview, he was very, very excited. He made several comments on my page about it. So Hope that helps you, Scott. Thanks for your enthusiasm, buddy.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Bearded.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited with how fast your channel is growing and all the cool things that you're doing on your channel. And I can't wait to see what you've got coming up. So thank you so much for having me on. And if I'm not mistaken, we have an interview, you and I, coming up for my channel, right?
That's right.
All right. So we're gonna pick some Brewbird brain. Get some advice for some projects coming up for on my channel, and I think I think I'm very positive about where the direction of your channel. I'm really happy with the way things are going for you and all the content that you have coming out. Every time you have a video come out, I watch it and I'm just impressed. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.